hate to bust up the party, but I will anyway.
X-Men 97 has brought a wave of nostalgia, and its latest, Tolerance is Extinction, took things up a notch with a special cameo from Spider-Man. Amid Magneto's global EMP wave, which wipes out electronics worldwide and shuts down Bastion's Prime Sentinels, Spider-Man makes a brief but pretty impactful appearance. He's seen swinging through New York City as the city plunges into total darkness, and seems surprised at what's happening. Of course, this is a nod to fans of the 90s Spider-Man animated series. This isn't just any Spider-Man, it's the same Spider-Man from the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man's animated series. This moment reaffirms Spider-Man's legacy and his connection to the X-Men. Back then, they had a crossover in 2 episodes of Spider-Man titled Mutant Agenda and Mutants' Revenge, where the X-Men and Spidey fought an evil scientist intending to kill all mutants. We're hoping that there will be a lot more Spider-Man in the future episodes of X-Men 97, but until it happens, let's explore the 2 episodes I mentioned and see what exactly happened when the X-Men dropped by Spider-Man's world. Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Mutant Agenda. Swinging through the trees, Spider-Man is overwhelmed with fear, haunted by the mutation Dr. Kirk Connors warned him about. So yeah, that was the basic premise of the 2 episodes that we're gonna cover. Scared about his condition and fearing becoming an arachnid monster, Peter heads to Xavier's mansion, clinging to the hope that the world's top expert on genetic mutation can help. But the minute he arrives, he triggers a booby trap. Almost immediately, his spider sense tingles, and before you know it, he's wrapped in a metallic straitjacket and dropped through a hole straight into the mansion. Spidey gets a not-so-warm welcome from Wolverine, who's ready to make the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man his next target if Spidey does anything unfriendly. It's not long before the rest of the X-Men make their presence known. They demand to know why Spider-Man is at the X-Mansion. Storm leads the charge, but he's not giving up information. Rogue tries to charm Spider-Man, but Wolverine isn't having any of that, and the brooding mutant threatens Spidey once again. He soon manages to break out of his restraints and webs up the X-Men before making a break for it. Not very accustomed to the mansion and its secrets, he finds himself in the danger room, which Gambit had left running. Cyclops asks which program is active, and Gambit reveals it's the Deadly Sentinels. Things are about to get intense. Spider-Man finds himself in a forest scene, which was created by the holograms in the danger room. His spider sense flares up, and he leaps just as a giant laser scorches the ground. But where did this laser attack come from? He looks up to find 2 massive sentinels looming over him. One sentinel raises its hand to blast him, but Spider-Man fires a web line onto its head, leaps to the other sentinel, and ties the web to its head too. However, the web shooting could not stop the sentinels for too long, as they simply shook off the web and moved in to finish the young hero. But before they can strike, Storm steps in and conjures a lightning storm that slows the Sentinels down. More Sentinels arrive, and the X-Men spring into action to take them down. Cyclops tells Jean to shut down the danger room, and she hurries to the control room to do just that. The X-Men gather around Spider-Man, ready to take him on. But before things can escalate, Professor X enters and orders everyone to stand down. He calmly asks Spider-Man why he's come to them, and Spidey explains that he needs to speak with Professor X directly. Spider-Man explains to Professor X that he's going through a mutation, but has no clue what he's turning into, or what his final form is gonna be, and it's obvious that he's petrified of this. He asks if Professor X can cure him of his mutation, but the professor says he can't, and that he built the school to train mutants to embrace their true selves. And that was pretty much the truth. I mean, Charles always wanted his students, and all mutants for that matter, to embrace who they were and welcome their mutations with open arms. Curing someone of their mutation was the last thing the professor would want. Anyway, frustrated by the lack of answers, Spider-Man storms out. I feel sad for him because, Peter is always there to help people around him, but when he needs help, he finds himself alone. Jubilee tries to stop him, but Wolverine tells her that Spider-Man is too much of a lone wolf. Look who's talking. Beast then rightly tells Wolverine that Spider-Man reminds him of when Wolverine first joined the X-Men. As Beast heads outside, Wolverine trails behind, and hears Beast talk about the Brand Corporation researching mutant genetics. He tells Spider-Man that the Brand Corporation might be able to help him with the problem at hand. However, this behavior of Beast was strange in Wolverine's eyes. He wasn't quite acting like himself, but Beast replies that maybe Wolverine doesn't know him as well as he thinks, and heads off to follow Spider-Man. In New York City, Herbert Landon, CEO of the Brand Corporation, meets with Hobgoblin. Hobgoblin reminds Landon to follow orders carefully, and warns him that the Kingpin won't take kindly to being double-crossed. Landon, desperate to keep his secret safe, pleads with Hobgoblin not to tell Kingpin, and insists that his technology must be protected. He hands Hobgoblin a briefcase filled with cash, then rushes outside and remotely detonates a bomb in the briefcase. Landon hops into his limo and speeds away. But Hobgoblin survives the blast, and he vows to squeeze more money out of Landon. Meanwhile, Landon receives a call from the Kingpin, who's upset after his spies at the Brand Corporation inform him that Landon has left the company, while Kingpin expects Landon to be hard at work. After Kingpin hands up, Alistair Smythe notes that Landon was rude, but Kingpin brushes it off. As long as Landon delivers an army of genetically modified super mutants, Kingpin can overlook a bit of impoliteness, but that does not mean that Kingpin trusted Landon. Well, Kingpin never really trusts anyone. Guess that's how he made it to where he is today. Later, Herbert Landon comes to his lab, where his secretary, Genevieve, tells him that the preparations for the press conference are complete. What was this press conference gonna be about? Landon's genetic mutation research. Genevieve expresses her concerns about revealing the secrets of the research at such an early age, but Landon tells her that he's gonna delay the full reveal, and will only share some preliminary findings to appease his anxious chief investor Kingpin. Shortly after, Beast finally catches up to Spider-Man, and tries to convince him to talk things out. Spider-Man, feeling overwhelmed by the X-Men's involvement, quickly swings away. But Beast persists. Beast catches up again and tells Spidey that Herbert Landon might have developed a cure for Spider-Man's mutation. Spider-Man swings away, leaving Beast alone. Unbeknownst to both of them, they're being watched by armed guards, who attack Beast after finding him alone. Despite his efforts to fend them off, he's knocked out by a stun ray and captured. Peter had no idea what befell Beast, and he arrived at the Watson house to creepily stalk Mary Jane. He's overwhelmed by the thought that if his mutation takes over, she might not want to be with him anymore. But I'm pretty sure that she wouldn't want to be with him if she found out that he stares at her from windows when she's not looking. Anyway, he then goes home and comes across a picture of Uncle Ben. Almost instantly, he's flooded with memories from a fishing trip and how Uncle Ben believed that Peter had it in him to achieve the unachievable, but lacks self-belief, and was sometimes the victim of some bad luck. This trip down memory lane turned out to be quite fruitful for Peter, as he found the much-needed self-confidence and the will to go on, no matter the odds. Standing atop the Brooklyn Bridge, he feels Ben's unwavering confidence in him and realizes that he can't give in to fear. No matter what challenges his mutation brings, he decides he must keep fighting. The next day, Cyclops and Jubilee take the Blackbird for a test flight in the desert. Cyclops pulls off a loop and it scares the bejesus out of Jubilee, so much so that she requests Cyclops to take her back home. Meanwhile, Wolverine calls them from the mansion to see if they've seen Beast. In fact, he wasn't even in the lab. Jean enters and notices Logan is unusually worried about Hank, aka Beast, and asks what's up. Logan mentions that Hank has been acting strangely. Jean points out that everyone has a painful past that they keep hidden, and that Logan of all people should understand that the best. Nevertheless, Wolverine tracks Beast's scent to the spot where he was abducted. As he sniffs around, he detects the scent of Beast, Spider-Man, and several other men. Jumping to conclusions, he believes Spider-Man betrayed Beast and led him to his capture. Of course, Logan was hell-bent on making Peter pay for what he had done. Apparently done. Later that day, Peter attends a convention center where Herbert Landon is set to unveil his breakthrough in genetic research. Taking his seat, Peter watches as Herbert Landon takes the stage and announces that his company is close to discovering a cure for mutations. Suddenly, Peter's spider sense kicks in, and Hobgoblin bursts into the room. Using his shock gloves, Hobgoblin fires at Landon, but Landon dodges in time. Hobgoblin grabs for him, but Spider-Man swings into action before yanking Landon away with his web. Hobgoblin then hurls a pumpkin bomb at Spider-Man, but he swings out of harm's way just in time. Spider-Man then leaps and kicks Hobgoblin's glider, then throwing the Hobgoblin off balance. He realizes that this is not his day and escapes after creating a hole in the ceiling. But the explosion leads to the ceiling's collapse, and Peter webs the weakened supports in an attempt to hold it up long enough for the crowd to escape. But it isn't enough. Just when it all seems lost, a mysterious force stabilizes the ceiling long enough for Spider-Man to escape. As he swings away, he wonders why Hobgoblin has his sights set on Herbert Landon. That night, Spider-Man sneaks into the Brand Corporation to keep an eye on Herbert Landon. Inside, Beast wakes up to find himself trapped in a cage with electrified bars. He's soon confronted by Landon and Genevieve. The two reveal that they once worked together, and Landon shows Beast a pool of chemicals, revealing that it's the same formula Beast once used to try to cure his own mutation, which instead caused his mutation to advance and gave him his blue fur. Oh yeah, so Hank once used to work at the Brand Corporation, where he worked tirelessly to create a serum that could isolate the X gene. But one thing led to another, and Hank took an overdose of his creation, which led to him developing his feline look, with the blue fur and all. Initially, he only had oversized hands and feet, and his new look was basically his secondary mutation. Landon explains that he's reworked the formula to break down mutant DNA, and that he now intends to use it to eradicate all mutants and purify the human race. He brings Beast's cage directly over to the pool of chemicals, making it clear that the furry mutant is going to be the first test subject of Landon's experiments. While keeping watch outside the Brand Corporation, Spider-Man's Spidey sense warns him of danger. He turns to see Hobgoblin flying on his glider and gives chase. Peter gets ahead of Hobgoblin and shoots a web line across 2 buildings. Hobgoblin slams into this makeshift tightrope and gets knocked off his glider before crashing to the ground. Spider-Man grabs Hobgoblin and asks why he wants to kill Landon, but Hobgoblin denies any intention to kill Landon. Instead, he tells Peter that he knows a dark secret about Landon and is blackmailing him to keep it hidden. Spider-Man throws Hobgoblin down and presses for the secret. Hobgoblin finally admits that Landon plans to kill all mutants. However, before he can dig any deeper, Wolverine shows up and asks where Beast is. Spider-Man, confused, insists he has no idea. Wolverine doesn't believe him though, and attacks. Soon enough, the 2 epic heroes start fighting, and I just wish I could see something of this sort in one of the live-action movies. What a sight it would be. Taking advantage of the chaos, Hobgoblin climbs back onto his glider, ready to throw one of his pumpkin bombs to eliminate both of them, but the episode ends right there.
This ought to make him see spots.
Mutants' revenge. Hobgoblin throws a pumpkin bomb into the alley, which explodes, but instead of killing Peter and Logan, the blast just punches them back. Logan quickly recovers and storms over to Peter to ask him the whereabouts of Hank, which the young hero is pretty clueless about. Peter denies any knowledge and manages to break free. As Logan charges, Peter webs his leg, but Logan slices through the webbing with his adamantium claws. Meanwhile, Hobgoblin hovers above on his glider and pulls out another pumpkin bomb. But before he can throw it, Peter webs his hands, making the bomb stick. In a panic, Hobgoblin flies off while Logan tackles Peter to the ground. Hobgoblin uses his razor bat to cut the bomb free, and then smashes a security camera with his glider to get Landon's attention. The plan works as Landon sees Peter and Logan on his security monitor. He knows that these two might wreck his whole plan, so he activates the missile defense system. As the missiles launch, Peter grabs Logan and swings them to safety. Peter tries to check his injuries, but Logan stops him, saying that he heals fast. Hobgoblin watches from the sky, seeing the two distracted, and decides it's the perfect time to collect what Landon owes him. Anyway, Peter tells Logan about Herbert Landon's secret plan to wipe out all mutants. Logan, determined to uncover the truth, orders Peter to follow him, and once again threatens that if he's lying, it'll be his last mistake. Logan extends his claws to scare Peter, but the young hero instead asked if Logan considered seeing a manicurist about his claws. Inside the Brand Corporation, Herbert Landon is furious when his security team informs him that Peter and Logan have escaped. He orders them to find the two heroes and then storms off. Hank is still trapped in his electrified cage, but he turns to Genevieve and questions why she's helping Landon. Genevieve explains that she wants to rid the world of suffering caused by the mutant condition, but Hank reminds her that Landon aims to eliminate mutants themselves, not just the condition. Genevieve insists that if mutants no longer exist, they can't suffer, and maybe that's the only way. So she and Landon were one of those who believe that instead of removing poverty, one should eliminate the poor. Anyway, she also tells Hank that what Landon is using is based on Hank's early work, which only means that Hank himself once believed in the same thing as Landon. Hank reflects on his younger years and recalls his anger and desire to cure his mutation, but he admits to Genevieve that being a mutant has actually brought immense joy into his life. Genevieve disagrees and tells him that there is nothing positive about being a mutant, and storms out of the room. As two guards patrol the hallways of the Brand Corporation, Logan crashes through the ceiling, quickly taking them down. He's joined by Peter, and the duo is soon pursued by more guards. They make a quick getaway though. In another room, Hobgoblin watches the commotion on a security monitor. He spots the enormous computer holding all of Landon's research on mutant genetics. Hobgoblin manages to download the files on a disk and infects the computer with a virus, thereby wiping out all of Landon's data. Meanwhile, Peter and Logan encounter more guards, but they make short work of them. In the lab, Landon is preparing to lower Hank into the chemical pool when security notifies him that Peter and Logan are on their way. He orders his men to stop them. The two heroes lock themselves in a room to avoid the guards, but Peter is frustrated when he realizes there's only one exit and that they're now trapped. However, Logan slices through a wall with his claws to create an escape route. Who needs doors when you have adamantium claws and brute force? As Logan carves their exit, Landon tells Genevieve they need to leave immediately. She apologizes to Hank before leaving. Logan finishes the hole and goes through, but the guards blow down the door, and it lands on top of Peter. The guards move in to finish him off, but Peter manages to lift the heavy metal door and tosses it at them. Logan and Peter squeeze through the hole in the wall and find themselves in the laboratory. Landon gets all panicky and orders his guards to stop Logan from sabotaging his experiment. But Logan deals with them. He grabs Landon and tosses him into the ground, before leaping up to free Hank from his electrified cage. The moment Logan touches the bars, he's jolted by an electric shock and begins to fall toward the pool of chemicals. Hank manages to catch him, but he struggles to hold on. Meanwhile, Peter sneaks into the lab. Landon, desperate to kill both Hank and Logan, flips the switch to lower the cage toward the pool. But Peter leaps to the control panel and halts the descent. Suddenly, a hole is blown through the ceiling, and Hobgoblin flies in on his glider. The whole pumpkin bomb shenanigans resume once again, and the explosion rocks the lab. Landon grabs a gun and fires at Hobgoblin, but accidentally hits the cable suspending the cage. The cable begins to break, and the two X-Men almost fall into the pool of chemicals. But Peter jumps to the cable and grabs hold, thereby preventing the cage from falling into the deadly pool. Meanwhile, Leewold rushes to Kingpin to report the mess that was taking place in the lab. When Kingpin demands an update on the mutant army that Landon promised, Leewold admits he suspects Landon never intended to create one. Back in the lab, Landon was still trying to shoot Hobgoblin. Hobgoblin tries to blackmail Landon and promises to return his research for a price. In a lucky shot, Landon manages to hit Hobgoblin's glider, which sends him spiraling out of control and into the cage. The collision rocks the cage, and Hank loses his grip on Logan, who almost plummets into the chemical pool, but Hank quickly grabs Logan's hand just in time and pulls him to safety. Landon is still after Hobgoblin and grabs onto the glider, but as soon as they soar over the vat of chemicals, Hobgoblin drops the disc containing all of Landon's research. Instinctively, Landon lets go of the glider to catch it and falls into the chemicals. Hobgoblin turns his attention to Peter, but Genevieve intervenes and shoots Hobgoblin. Seeing no further profit in this fight, Hobgoblin flies away. Meanwhile, Logan swings back and forth until he and Hank gather enough momentum to clear the vat of chemicals and land safely on the ground. Logan asks what the chemicals are, and Hank reveals it's the endgame of a plot to destroy all mutants. Genevieve rushes over and insists they get Landon out of the chemicals. He manages to emerge on his own, but there was a little catch. You see, he was now transformed into a monstrous green giant. Genevieve begs them to cure Landon, but Hank says there's nothing they can do. Landon, now a hulking monster, approaches the computer and absorbs its electrical energy. As soon as he absorbs the electricity, he grows larger. He grabs Genevieve, and when Logan tries to intervene, Landon throws him across the room. The monster absorbs more energy and further increases in size before smashing through a wall and heading into New York City. Peter's fears of turning into a monstrous creature just got real, but he also knew that he had to stop this menace. Hank then figures that the Landon creature is in pain and only electrical energy can relieve it. Peter warns that if they don't stop Landon, he will drain all the power in New York City, and if that happens, Landon would become unstoppable. Landon rips through the sewers to access the wires and absorb the electricities to grow even larger. Professor X learns about this from a news broadcast, and wastes no time in sending the X-Men to deal with it. The Landon creature grabs a news helicopter, but Rogue flies out of the Blackbird to rescue it from Landon's grip, and safely lowers it to the ground. In retaliation, Landon swats Rogue. As she falls and crashes into a building, Peter swings in to catch her and safely brings her to the ground. Hank explains that Landon was using electricity to destroy mutant cells, and now he depends on it to survive. Peter suggests they use an antenna adjusted to the right frequency to cut off the energy in the creature's body. Hank agrees and says that they have the equipment on board the Blackboard. As the Blackbird takes to the air, Peter instructs the X-Men to calibrate the antenna to the right frequency. Meanwhile, Storm, Jubilee, and Gambit launch a ground assault on Landon. During the attack, he drops Genevieve, but Gambit catches her and gets her to safety. Rogue flies out of the Blackbird and wraps a cable around Landon, with the jet lifting him into the sky. The antenna activates and begins to drain Landon's energy, but his mutated form is too heavy and he starts to pull the Blackbird down with him. It's now that Genevieve reveals her telepathic powers. She uses them to gently lower both Landon and the Blackbird to the ground. With his energy repleted, Landon reverts to his human form, though part of his body remains mutated. To be honest, he was kinda looking like the monster version of DC's Two-Face. In fact, the whole falling into the chemical pool thing was pretty similar to the vat that Joker falls into. A bit too inspired? What do you think? Anyway, Hank approaches and thanks Genevieve for saving them and accepting her mutant identity. He tells Peter that she has telekinetic abilities, and Peter realizes that she was the one who held the convention center roof long enough for him to escape. Genevieve admits she joined the Brand Corporation because Landon had found a cure, but now sees herself as a monster. Hank reassures her that she's no monster and promises to introduce her to Professor Xavier. Cyclops apologizes to Peter for their rocky start, and the other X-Men express their pleasure at working together. Logan tells Peter that no matter his problems or mistakes, he doesn't have to face them alone, offering friendship and reconciliation with Hank. As the X-Men depart in the Blackbird, Peter sees a Daily Bugle headline that Mariah Crawford is back in town and heads to the Hardy Foundation to meet Dr. Crawford. She mentions that she must leave for Africa soon, and asks why he took so long to reach out. Peter admits that he needed to be reminded that when he's in trouble, he's not alone and should rely on his friends. So that was all about the X-Men entering Peter's world in Spider-Man the Animated Series. These two episodes are considered to be one of the best crossovers as far as animated shows are concerned, and I admit that the hype is all true. I mean, the way the X-Men on one hand and Spider-Man on the other complemented each other is commendable, and I truly hope we get more of this in the future. Now that the X-Men are about to be merged into the Marvel Studios banner, I'm more optimistic than ever about a similar live-action crossover. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.
But Gambit see no future for you in the cards. Gene, go to the